Hi, this is Mark. Congratulations. You have found this amazingly awesome show. Chances are you're listening to it right now on whether it's iTunes or Stitcher Radio or some other mobile app that allows you to stream this amazingly awesome show to your ear holes. And I can't stress how awesomely amazing this show really is. But did you know that you can also catch the latest episode of this show on the Tangibound Network? That's right. Go check out tangiboundnetwork.com. You can look them up and you can listen to it right there. It's even mobile friendly. What more could you ask for? Which means you can pull it up on your iPhone or your Android, even your Windows phone. Yeah, who has one of those? But still, point remains, you can do it. You can do it. Check it out, tangiboundnetwork.com. Listen to this show, the latest episode, every time. Check it out.
Welcome to the Wicked Radio Network.
Life sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time, so stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Welcome to The Crazy Life, everybody. My name is Jen, and I am your hostess, and I made it 2 weeks in a row. Yay! I'm actually making commitments and keeping them. It's awesome. So yay me. There you go, folks. There's my win for the day, for the week, is I made a commitment and I stood by it. So very proud of myself. That being said, as always, I have Brian and Hannah with me. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. All right. So it's that time, and I know I'm going to get crickets again. Who's going first? How was your weeks?
My weeks?
Your weeks.
There's only been one, though. I'll go first. I don't care. Because mine was...
We're Michigan.
Yeah.
Michigan, you put an S at the end of everything.
No, that's only for, like, stores.
So, go ahead. Sorry,
yeah.
Hannah.
Yeah. This week has been a real, like, a mess as far as, like, again, most of mine is, like, weather, but I've had a headache for, like, the whole week, almost. And it's all sinuses. And, yeah, that's been brutal. Which, that stuff never helps when it comes to, can I get myself out of bed each day, basically? You wake up, you've got a massive headache. And the ones I get are like, basically it's like if someone just put their finger like in my tear duct almost, that's where it feels like. It's like right on the inside of my nose. And it hurts so much. And it's kind of kept me in bed a few days this week. And, that never helps when, again, I've kind of felt the last few weeks like I was kind of maybe going downward again. And it's like, so today I tried, I got up and my mom hurt her wrist last week. So I kind of forced myself to make dinner multiple times, which is something I haven't done in a while. So that was good. But, it's really tough. You wake up and you hurt and it's like, how do I get past this to go do the other, especially when on a normal day, I already have enough trouble, fighting with myself to get out of bed. And now it's like, well, I know the only thing that really helps is basically a cold compress and sleep. I took medicine for it, but it didn't really do much because the pressure system was right over our head. So, it was really a tough thing, and I started kind of going back to, I was feeling really bad for myself basically, but I caught it and kind of stopped it a little bit, but it's still been a really, really rough week. And the other thing that I'm noticing is while I'm doing this, like I'm putting stuff off again. I'm getting really bad about putting stuff off. Like I'm down to my last pill of my antidepressants tonight. I don't have any more.
That's no good.
No, I know. And that's the thing is I've been putting that off. I have other things I need to call and make appointments, and I've been putting that off. And it's just, I've realized that I've been really bad about that. And, and it's not just normal laziness. It's a dread of the phone call, and it's like we've talked before, Henno and I have talked especially about, you have something that'll take 5 minutes, but instead you'll put it off for like a week instead of just attacking it and conquering it.
Right.
So
I've definitely had my doses of that the last few weeks for sure.
Yeah. And I just have really felt, I don't even know how to describe it, because it's not even that I'm overwhelmed this time. Normally I kind of have that overwhelming feeling, and it's not even that this time. I just have got no drive. And then I think about making the phone calls, and then I start going through, the negative thought process. And even though I know better and I try to stop it and whatever, I can't be bothered. I have no want to do it, And now I'm at a point that, and this is a great step for people when they wonder what's the difference between, say, depression and just having a bad day or a sad day, is that this is affecting me. I'm out of my blood pressure medicine. I'm on my last antidepressant pill tonight. I need to make an appointment, talk to my psychologist to see if anything is changed in that. You know what I mean? It's like these things are things that affect my quality of life, essentially.
Yes.
And I'm now pushing those aside. So
you can't be bothered with them.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's your difference. If you see that you're doing stuff like that, like pushing quality of life stuff aside, that literally the stuff I just mentioned should take how long to resolve? Mm-hmm. It's a matter of phone calls. It's really all it is. And I'll probably be on the phone no longer than 20 minutes. It's just a matter of doing it. And it's so aggravating because on one hand, it's like, the logical part of my brain goes, come on, it'll take you 20 minutes, but the other side keeps winning. So, yeah. So I have a big win, which was, again, making dinners more, going back to cooking, not just, oh, here's stuff out of a box, but actually, like tonight I made a chicken stir fry, and I cut up a bunch of stuff and cooked it, and it was really good. And I like doing that. I don't, but I've gotten to where if I cook once a week, it's other than sandwiches, it's a big event for me.
Well, something to think about. There's two things. One of which, make sure that it's a slippery slope, but you got to make sure that you also give yourself a break when it comes to physical pain and physical ailments, because it's tough because you can't let yourself go too much. You can't let yourself slide too much. Yep. But you also need to let yourself off the hook a bit.
Yeah, I know.
So it's finding that balance. I mean, obviously it seems like you've gone way too far the other way. You've kind of let yourself slide too much. But you can get back on that fence or that horse, and you can. Yeah. And and I have full confidence that you will.
Yeah.
And you'll get it going and get it together.
And I know I will too, because another thing is another great example is I have a library book that's 3 weeks overdue. Jen, you've known me for 20 some years. Have you ever known me to be bad about library books?
No.
Yeah. It's so that's what I was saying. It's like I'm all that kind of stuff. I'm just pushing, and ignoring. So, but you're right. I'll get over it. It'll happen. It's just cause it runs in its cycles, and eventually I'll wake up.
Shall pass.
Yeah. I'll wake up and I'll feel, like, okay, maybe I'll do whatever, or I'll be up for something else. And while I'm up for that, I'll be like, well, I'm just going to do this and sit down. I posted on our Facebook group a couple of videos I stumbled across last night that are about, for people with driving anxiety, which obviously is very topical to me. But it's to try to help people get over their anxiety. One of them is like what to do in the event that you get anxiety while you're driving. The other one is more a girl talking about how at 22 she just got her driver's license and how, mentally it took her all this time and whatever. And they're both pretty good. But, you get kind of caught up. You get caught up in these cycles and you don't realize that what's going on. But the one guy points out, he's like the biggest key and the best way to beat, an anxiety or a phobia is generally to just, go headfirst into it, and show yourself, I can do this. Again, go back to Chicago, Henno and I in the art museum. I can keep going back to that and going, I can deal with people. I can deal with this. I can, even though it's still hard. And it's one example of yes versus a bunch of no, but it's proof to myself that I can and will, at some point I'll overcome it. It's just been a rough week.
Absolutely. And that's huge that you can recognize that. It's so important that you can kind of put it in perspective that it's been a bad week. It's not been a bad life.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a bad life forever. It's been a bad week, and it's only half over. So
right.
Who's to say, you still got another half of the week because it is Wednesday for those out there who are listening on Sunday or Monday or whenever. But, you still have another half of the week to turn it into something that you want.
Yeah, exactly.
There's always...
Well, and no matter what, it's, even if it today was Saturday, it's like, well, there's still Sunday, there's still Monday, there's, it's
exactly.
like we've talked before.
You have opportunity.
Yeah.
So, which is good. Another thing I wanted to mention is a good friend of ours, and I had dinner with her the other night, and she is just now starting to see a therapist and starting to get some help, and which I'm so happy for her. She was really in a bad place for quite a long time, and she's finally getting herself to the point where she wants help, so she's
good.
Actually seeking help.
Yeah.
And one of the first meetings she had with her psychiatrist, they sat down and they were talking and stuff, and she was explaining what's going on, and the therapist stopped her and said, wow. And she said, what? I can't believe all the pain that you've been in and all the stuff you're carrying on your shoulders, but yet you're able to get up and get out of bed every day and go to work and focus and do your thing. She's like, that's amazing that you're able to kind of hold everything together and to be able to do this. Our friend burst into tears.
Yeah.
Because she had no idea how long she had waited for someone to validate her in that.
But it makes sense because most people that run through these things end up more toward where I am than where she is. Like I am, I'm not a productive member of society, I don't go out, I don't work, I don't, I almost don't exist in the real world, so it's great that she's able to do that. 'Cause some people they're able to get up, still go to work, still do this, and others, it's too much. Yeah. And
people around her, I mean, she's been surrounded with a lot of people who don't understand, who have, pretty much said she's unmotivated and
lazy.
If she just would put herself, set her mind to it, she could get things more done and stuff.
Yeah.
And
sure. I mean, while she's at it, she might, while she's at it, she might as well just smile and feel better,
Right. So that's all she's heard for the majority of the last few years, and has lost relationships, lots of different relationships with people because they don't understand, and she would get frustrated because she couldn't explain it to them. Yeah. And so, because I was giving her some feedback on Henno's reset the rules. You're going to change the rules. You got to announce that you've changed the rules. Yep. Because that was one of her big things, that she would change the rules on people but not tell them about it, and then get mad when they didn't understand why things were different, type of a thing.
Right.
So, and Yeah, we had a very great talk, but it was just really awesome that she was able to have that moment.
Good.
And in that validation. I
Yeah.
mean, and it really spoke volumes to me, and even kind of what you were just saying, which is we do carry a lot of pain. In some days, it is just opening our eyes, taking a couple steps from the bed to the bathroom and back again.
Yeah.
If that's what you can do, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You got out of bed. That's awesome. And I'm not being sarcastic. I'm being real,
Yeah.
Support that. Enjoy, celebrate that, because that's, you accomplished something.
Yeah, that's why we talked about it before on here about how, when there's just some days where it's why I've said, like my to-do list generally are, get up, clean clothes, brush my teeth, like stuff that it's like, and even just accomplishing those, it feels like an amazing feat some days. And going back to what you said real quick about I'm talking, like, I don't think Heno said a word here. We've been just talking all over him. But,
sorry, Heno.
No, going back to what you were saying about the validation, remember when I went in and talked to our doctor for the first time, and when she said the words, "You aren't alone. This happens to a lot of people," and she started kind of like, doing that. Yeah. And I remember walking out of there and I'm like, I feel so much better. I just needed that confirmation that I don't have to shoulder this, that it's not me necessarily, that this happens to people. It's normal, if you will. Again, I hate the word, but there's so many people that suffer from some sort of a mental illness, and it's on different ranges. Again, like I said, with me, it's made it hard for me to get out of bed. Other people just have smaller sessions with it to where a day or two and they're okay. And others are worse than I am to where they wouldn't even be able to do a podcast, because of the, so it's why going to your doctor and having a support group are so important, because like our friend, she was looking for support, but people either didn't understand or they didn't want to understand it, and I'm not judging anyone. It's just, you kind of fall into one or the other, but, and now she found someone who understands. And if she's like I am, the fact that they're a doctor helps, because they get instant credibility because they're a doctor, Whereas if a friend told you the exact same thing, which you have told her, it doesn't, for some reason, it just doesn't register the same,
And that's fine. I mean, and that's, sometimes it's not the words, it's the voice.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not the words that we need to hear. It's the mouthpiece that we're hearing the words from that makes all the difference in the world. And it sucks, because I've had to give my words to somebody else to say, because I knew coming from me, it wouldn't be received. Coming from the other person, it would.
Right.
So if I needed the message to be out there, I had to use them as my mouthpiece.
Yep. But the big win is that they finally got to a point that they wanted the help and realized that they needed it. And then took the huge step of asking for it, going to see someone, because that's a massive step,
And she also understands that it's a process, because the person she's seeing right now, I don't think is going to be the end person. There are some conflicts and things that need to be resolved. So I'm thinking that maybe this is just a step on the road, and to finding her right support system. But that's okay too.
Yeah, that's fine.
And she's really excited about that. Mm-hmm. So, very cool. You're getting a little pixelated, Brian. Are we having Skype issues, or are we good?
It's okay right now. It's still sounding all right. So.
All right, cool. So, Heno, how's your week been, dude?
We have a fire like an hour to the west of us, and so it's blowing smoke into our whole valley, and it sucks.
Oh,
yeah,
it really sucks. Is the fire contained?
No,
it's a huge fire.
That's
I apologize for my lack of worldly knowledge, because obviously I'm living in my own bubble.
Right.
But is it like a forest fire?
Yeah. It's. I mean, it's just been every year for the last 5 years now.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily there's only been 2 that have come close to us.
Yeah.
But the rest are just, usually they're just in the distance. They're an hour north or an hour east, and at least this one is one of those ones where if the wind shifts, it'll go away for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But like right now, it's just they have the southwestern side of it all contained, but the part that's in the heavier woods heading north and east is completely still just wild. And it was like, Sharon and I have just been like, complaining about, well, you have headaches all the time, your brain's slow, and you're just, and you're just miserable because you're inside, you really can't go out and do anything.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
the weird part was it was pointed out to Sharon that there's the amount of carbon monoxide that's in the air. And I'm like, oh, that explains the whole sluggish, not thinking straight.
Yep.
We're not even, because I'll see people literally out on their bikes riding, and I'm just like, that's nuts. And I've always thought just from the amount of particles that are in the air.
Oh, yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, it's not even the particles. Carbon monoxide, you can't smell it. You can't anything. And I do the safety meetings at work, and I looked into how carbon monoxide affects our bodies, and it's vicious.
It's really
like
bad.
it literally takes the place of oxygen.
Yes.
Yes.
Like I was like, holy cow, and it does it in a really just insidious way. And so, yeah, it's just been kind of a bummer, like
Sure.
a lot of it's the, it's just frustrating because it's like it's happening again, that kind of stuff. And for me, actually, I shared this on Salty Language with further Q of the W this next week. Is the first time I smell smoke, it brings me back to when I got sober, because that was the first major fire we had that literally like almost burned down the ski resort.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I mean, that's where it ended up. It ended up so close to us. And I was so emotionally confused and, just messed up from, my whole existence changing, trying to find, like all the anxiety and just the emotional ups and downs and the learning for the first time how to deal with my thoughts and feelings without a crutch. And that fire was going on at the same time. And I was very lonely and, like I said, anxiety and depression and this and that. And so whenever I smell smoke, like the first time, I literally have an emotional reaction to that. It brings me back to there. And this year's the best it's been, but like in a couple of years past, like I get into a funk. And it's not just because we're all dealing with this, because it brings me back to that time. It's, sense of smell is a very, very powerful memory trigger.
It is.
Definitely. Yeah.
I think it's way more powerful than visual sometimes.
Yeah, it definitely can be.
I actually think that's scientific. That smell is more, the scent memory is stronger than any of the other senses. I believe I read that somewhere. And
so, yeah.
I was just going to say, and an FYI, another thing that takes oxygen out of your bloodstream, is very similar to carbon dioxide, is alcohol.
Yep.
Just saying.
Yeah, I definitely learned. I knew that anyway, but I learned that especially when my dad was on oxygen. Because we were told no perfumes, no hairsprays, no anything that's scented if you can avoid it. Because it robs the air of oxygen, and he needed, all the pure air he could get, basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yep. So, it's a good tip.
But I got out of town over the weekend, and I went to Salt Lake City and hung out with a friend, and just had a nice dinner and got caught up, and I went and did some shopping and, in a big city. So that was kind of nice. Mm. But otherwise, just been a week, nothing new. I had one night where I just couldn't fall asleep, like at all. And all of a sudden it was 4 a.m. and I'm like, why am I still awake?
Yeah.
Well, the good thing is, did you let it get to you? Did you stress and get anxious about it, or did you just roll with the punches?
That was it. I just rolled with it. And then finally at 4:30, I'm like, yeah, I think I'm tired enough. And I got 2 hours of sleep in before I went to work. And I actually ended up having a good day at work.
Wow.
It wasn't, but then what was wild was, isn't that weird? But last night we were, it's the anniversary of Sharon's, one of her oldest friends. She finally lost her battle with cancer a year ago. And so we went to the family's house last night and there were a lot of friends there and, just to commemorate it. And it was wild. We all started talking and all of us couldn't sleep last night and all of us fell asleep. Some, not some people stayed up, but Sharon woke up around 3, I think, and everyone else had been awake. And that was when Danny passed, was at like 4:15 or something like that. Or it was like one of those weird, like you get like that chill. All of a sudden it's like, oh wow, that's okay. That's wild. Cause all of a sudden, I just mentioned something about being tired because we haven't slept much. And someone said, I couldn't sleep either last night. And I'm like, well, I got to sleep or it was something that kept me awake. And then at 4:30 I fell asleep and someone was like, I just, for some reason got up around 3:30. And then everyone was like, well, that's when Danny passed, was around 4:00. All of us are like, oh, weird.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I mean, that's cool because that's a huge, huge issue for many people is the fact that if they can't get to sleep, they start an anxiety cycle and it can really, really blow you up. So the fact that you were able to just kind of roll with it and deal with it, I mean, that's huge. That's a great, great sign.
Yeah, I started to really like dread the day, especially, when I couldn't sleep, I've just learned now. It's like, don't try. Just, I just started playing my video games and almost bent my iPad in half when I had a little mini temper tantrum.
No, Henno, no breaking the iPad.
I know, it's brand new. Like I seriously bent it and I'm like, uh-oh. Like there's some real noobs that play World of Tank Blitz at 3 a.m. But, I just go, now I just go, well, I'm just going to sleep when I sleep. And when I got up, I was a little bit like, oh my goodness. But it was wild how I got to work and I didn't even think about it. I just went and had my day and I did fine. There are a few times where, you can tell the blood pressure's gone up a little bit because you're, fried. But it was funny. This morning I was thinking, what would be my win for the week? And I was like, that would be the only thing, would be that for some reason I didn't get whacked about that. Like I didn't get, like you said, that anxiety cycle or anything. So
it's hard for many, many people. And the fact that you handled it really well that's kudos, man. That's really good. That's awesome.
Yep.
I'm just take that.
Yeah.
Own that.
No, it's why I got into where like people ask me all the time online. They're because they know I'm from the US and they'll be in like England or whatever. And they'll be like, don't you ever sleep? And I'm like, I do. I sleep when most people are at work. So you don't realize that I sleep because you're not paying attention to your phone during those hours. So as far as I could be there all day, but I'm not. I'm sleeping. And then when you come home from work, I'm awake. So I'm back on, so it just seems like I'm there all the time, but I'm not. But I'm the same way as like Henno. I've gotten to where for the most part now, unless I have to be up the next day, that's the only time that it messes with me. But otherwise I'm just like, I'm just going to fall asleep when when I feel that I'm really tired. Whatever I'm doing, I just shut it down. And if I'm watching Netflix, I stop. Or if I'm reading a comic book, I'm done and put it aside and try to go to sleep. And I've found, and I sleep better than I used to. I still have a lot of issues with it, but I sleep a whole lot better because I've let go of that control part of it, that I have to sleep now. It's like, oh, it's bedtime. I have to get this sleep. And, you don't. Luckily, I don't have to operate any heavy machinery or anything, if I don't get any sleep.
That was the wild thing is I got to work and when I got there, I realized what I had to do today. And there was some carpentry stuff and it's not that it's really hard, we have great tools, but when it's a one-off thing that we don't do often,
oh yeah,
it's, I just don't have the habits to think, I don't have the forethought that I would have when I do something all the time.
Right. You can't go into like muscle memory or something with it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so it's one of those, and for some reason I had that urge to just like, I'd really love to just put this off. Like you were talking about your week, Brian, but I just didn't. I was just, something inside me just said, you know what you need to do, just go do it.
Yeah.
You'll feel better afterwards. Yeah. And I did. It only took me an hour and a half. And when I was done, the people loved it. It looked great. I had some mess ups, but it's like good carpentry is about how well you can hide those things.
That's so true. Yeah. I think that's about that way. That's about that way for every profession, though, isn't it? It really is. Like,
is, it? It's how well you handle the mess ups.
Yeah, it really is. That's why you go get training, is so you can handle, the mistakes. Yeah. You there, Jen?
Exactly.
Okay, there we go. Whew.
Well, something that I was playing with this week, is there's some photo apps that you can get that I'm sure everybody's familiar with different ones. And I guess on Snapchat and other forms of social media, which I don't use, there's filters that do the same thing. But they can apply makeup. You can clear your skin. You can change your hair. You can make yourself skinny. You can make yourself rounder, thinner, whatever you want to do. You could pretty much adapt yourself to find your form of perfect. And it's really interesting because we're really starting to get to this point in our society, in our world, it seems, where we are craving perfection and we're holding ourselves to our own form of perfection. And when we can't meet our own personal standards for ourselves, we really are struggling and having a lot of anxiety. And it's so interesting when you compare what you consider would be perfect for you. Like, for instance, take these filters and you filtered a whole bunch and you get your photo exactly how you envision you being perfect would look like. And you show it to somebody else. I'm like, oh, yeah, it looks nice. Mm-hmm. You're like, really? No, that's like the perfect me. That's like the hair is amazing and the eyes are popping and the skin is, how is this not amazing to you? And like,
yeah.
You looked better in that other picture, the one with the smile that you had and you were at so-and-so's birthday party. Yeah, that one. I like that one better of you. And you stop and you're like, no, you don't understand. This is perfection. Mm-hmm. And they just don't get it. Well, and that frustration and that anxiety that you have that builds up inside you, it's amazing. We do this to ourselves on a daily basis.
And the reason that they don't agree with you necessarily is they've already accepted you as you are. And you haven't. And, it's a difficult thing for a lot of people to overcome. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's amazing when you're faced with that. I mean, another thing that I just came across today, I'm growing my hair out right now and it's driving me nuts. I usually have it very short. Right now it's almost to my shoulders. And it's driving me crazy. And I turned to my fiance. I'm like, God, I cannot wait to get my hair cut. He's like, why? It's the best it's ever looked. I'm like, what? And yet again, it's like, no, this is not me perfect. This is me imperfect. Mm-hmm. I want the perfect me with the short hair and my vision of perfection. And I need to meet my expectations of what I'm going to be in my perfection. Mm-hmm. So it's really kind of interesting how this kind of keeps popping up. And then Brian, you were talking about an article that you found mm-hmm. that was kind of talking about perfection as well.
Yeah. It's funny before we get into it. Yeah, you did.
Are we having Skype issues?
No, everything's fine on my end. But you mentioned that, and it goes back to the control, like that refusing to let go of things, and it's just accepting. And that's really what most of my therapy has been about, is letting go of so much, air quote, control in my life. But now realizing that I've actually gained more control by letting go of what I perceived as, because now everything is manageable. Before it was like you're trying to hang on to all the balloons and trying to keep them from floating, and it's like, if I just grab one occasionally, I can hold it down, or a couple. But when I'm trying to grab like 50 of them, I can't possibly with one, my two arms hold all of them where I want them. And that's, so this is definitely something we've talked on in this show before, because going for perfectionism kind of leads into when we talked about, paralysis by analysis, and, like, instead of just making a choice and just living with the ramifications, people want to wait until they get the perfect opportunity or the timing is right or whatever, whether it's in dating or their business life or just whatever it is in life. It's like people get paralyzed by those options and they just don't just take the step, so because they're afraid of that failure. But anyway, let's see here. This is from everydayhealth.com, which I've talked about before. It's from Teresa Borchardt wrote this. And it's six steps to beating perfection. And the first one's distinguish between realistic and unrealistic goals. Perfectionists have difficulty differentiating goals that are good, appropriate, and within reach from lofty dreams that they're going to create lots of angst because there's a better chance of them not happening than happening. For example, a friend of my son's dreamed of playing professional basketball. That was all fine and good until he was placed on the C team of his 7th grade basketball team and started having behavioral issues. He practiced his shots for hours every day and got obsessive about his technique, but in the games he would freeze up because he was putting way too much pressure on himself. At certain points in my life, when I feel my expectations creeping up in the inappropriate zone, I'll sometimes make myself a list of my goals on a sheet of paper. Then I'll go back and circle the realistic ones, or take the unrealistic goal and tweak it so it produces less pressure and I don't freeze up. Which this reminds me of, essentially, by writing it down, you can then use the distorted thinking process and look at those things. Yeah. And you can then break that down, like she said, so that there's less pressure on you.
I was actually teaching a class a while ago, a few years ago, and it was 7th graders. And we were talking about careers and what career paths to go on and stuff. And I was telling them, I'm like, what are you passionate about? I said, if you could get a job, someone paid you to do something, what would that thing be? And one of the kids raised his hand, and I'm like, what's your passion? What would you love to be paid to do? And he looked at me and he's like, basketball. And the whole class started laughing. Because he's, of course, the shortest kid in the entire class.
Sure, right.
They're always the shortest kids in the entire. He's like, I want to be a basketball player. I said, all right. I said, okay, guys, what can he do to become a basketball player? So, practice, absolutely. Make sure you study and learn rules, absolutely. One kid mentioned grow. I'm like, wouldn't hurt. He's got some time. So, life may happen for him. I said, what if it doesn't work? What else can he do? He loves basketball so much. What else could he do? And we started brainstorming. And it came up being a coach, being a agent, a basketball agent, being a commentary, person, being sidelines reporters and stuff. Yeah. And so we started going down this path, and without even realizing, this was before the podcast, before distorted thinking and stuff, it was one of those moments that will stand in my mind, because I had the whole class, something that we thought was silly, everyone's kind of laughing about. In a sense, we just talked through making an unrealistic goal into a realistic goal. Yes. And setting this kid up for success versus letdown, because he's probably never going to be a professional basketball player.
Right. Yeah, because just the odds alone are against you.
Yes.
I mean, no matter your height, your size, your skill,
Exactly.
you can be a very good basketball player and still not be like an NBA player. It happens all the time.
So it was really interesting that opportunity kind of happened. And so it was neat. And then we did the same thing with another kid who loves playing video games.
Yeah.
So he's like, I just want to play video games for a living. So we walked through that and all the different options that he would have for careers if he loves video games so much.
Yeah, and there are a ton of things. Yeah.
Yeah. It's perspective and taking it, and you're right, in assigning appropriate goals, that some good to have lofty goals to reach for, but you set the smaller ones on the steps to get you to the lofty goal.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll make it there, maybe you won't, but the journey, all about that journey.
Yeah.
And those steps.
Yeah. It's always the way it was always told to me was basically using a sports analogy, which is, you're not going to hit a home run every at bat, and you've got to realize that sometimes there's going to be outs and, other times, it's just a base hit, but it's still, you're just going up there hoping to make good contact. That's really what you're hoping to do. You
want to move things forward.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know what? I'll get him next time. And then you go up the next time. And it's, it's that kind of a thought process that really can help you, break off of that. That's why, pitcher will give up a home run. They can't think about that pitch. They have to immediately just clear the mechanism and go right back to, throwing another one. Or, same with a hitter, you strike out. Oh, well, just whatever. You pay attention to, the strategy or whatever and try to not let it happen again. That's all you can do. You're wrong in life. It's that kind of thing. But the obsession stuff, like that mentioned in here, that's what freezes a lot of people up. And I think a lot of that, it reminds you of like test anxiety.
Yes.
Like when you're in school, how many people do you know that you'll be talking to them about the subject and they know everything the teachers talked about or what's in the chapter or whatever. And then you see them get their test back and they got like, a D on it or something. And you're like, how did you not get, and it's test anxiety. You're confident, the stuff, but then when you sit down in a timed format and all of a sudden you panic, or kids going to the chalkboard. Like it, but you just don't want to be in front of. Yeah, you just don't want to be in front of everyone while doing it.
Have you ever gotten frozen, Henno, with your music, like playing in front of people or practicing something so much that you forget it?
Yeah, luckily nothing's ever happened at a crucial moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've absolutely had that where it's like right before we start to play, I'm like, I have no idea how the song starts. I have no idea what I'm supposed to play. And I looked at the band and I'm like, I have no idea. Like it's just gone.
Yeah.
Just gone.
Completely.
Oh man, that's got to be almost terrifying though. It's like, how do I not know this song? Because I'm assuming it was one you had practiced.
Well, yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's something absolutely I knew. There's no reason not to know it.
Yeah,
and it just was just
gone. Yeah,
and that's the thing is the fact that I know that can happen. Like, I was asked to play at a wedding, and while we were going to do their reception, they said, "Hey, do you think you could play something as the bride comes down the aisle?" And I'm just like, everything in me just said no because like I knew I could do it, but I know that thing can happen.
Right. And of all the moments you don't want, like, if you forgot a song at a reception, who cares? People will laugh it off because everyone's having a good time. But at the wedding, if all of a sudden you're just like supposed to be playing something and you're just like, everyone's like, what? Why aren't they playing?
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
And then nothing.
Yeah.
The once in a lifetime moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get you. Like, I just ruined your wedding. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep. That makes sense.
So I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. I did it, and luckily it all went well, and it was awesome. But
yeah, I can understand that though. But again, you didn't, it's there, but you still, you still went through with it. So yeah.
Yeah, that how you started with that idea of the paradoxes, the paradox of giving up control, you actually find that you have more control.
Yeah.
And it's just one of, I mean, I've shared about it here so many times about just how that has come true for me.
Yeah.
Because, and it's in ways that it has to do with ego.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it has
definitely.
to do with ego and how I perceive my place in this world.
Yep.
And when I let go of that, I find that I have a lot more control because it comes back to being concerned about how other people view me.
Yep.
And that's such a huge part of perfectionism.
What a great transition, Henno. The second one is practice failing.
Ah, perfect.
Yeah. One of the most effective ways to defeat perfectionism is by doing exercises in which you get comfortable failing. That is, learn a new skill that will require lots of failing, frustration, and embarrassment. You'll see that part of the learning curve demands patience, self-compassion, and a tolerance of failure. For example, even though I've only been on a paddleboard a handful of times, I decided to join up with a racing group the other night with people who paddle 21 miles in the ocean and do these cool 360 turns on their boards. I was lapped about 10 times and spent a chunk of the evening in the water, not on it, but my comfort level with failing is now higher. I know that being the worst person in a group of athletes is not the end of the world. I hope I can translate that to other areas of my life where perfectionism causes anxiety and depression. And it's exactly what you just said. You're so worried about controlling something so you don't look bad in front of others that you won't allow yourself to fail. And failing is where you learn everything.
That's it.
You know, you learn what you need to work on. And instead of worrying and trying to get all your blocks in one row, it's like, just go and fail. Then you'll know what you need to work on. You know, I mean, the problem is obviously that anxiety gets in the way of that. But that's really, if you can get your mentality that way, it's, you know, like we talked on the dating episode of this show, you know, and a friend of mine made a comment. I was talking with her about, you know, me, and I have a horrible fear of going up and talking to women. And she goes, worst case scenario, you walk away with like, basically you're back to square one. You walked in with no date. So if you walk out with no date, you haven't lost on the evening. She's like, you've just stayed the same. And I was like, nobody looks at it that way though. If you're going out and you're hoping to meet somebody and you don't meet anybody, most people would see that as a failure, you know, because, well, I tried, I talked and it just didn't work. And it's like, no, you got to keep, you know, it's Tony from Salty Language is always, you know, throwing off hooks in the water. You know, it's that mentality though. It's like, you're going to fall on your face. It's going to happen, you know, just let it, you know, like you've said before, you know, life lifes you sometimes, you know, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, you know, but we're all going to fail. Nobody really is perfect. We all fail at something, you know.
It's just amazing how the expectations we have for ourselves are so much higher than the expectations we have for others.
Yeah.
In many cases. I mean, sometimes we have unfair expectations of others too, but for the most part, we'll forgive people for their failures before then we'll forgive ourselves.
Yeah, and we could do the exact same thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
It's like, but I know better.
Yeah.
It's, wait a minute. No, they knew better too.
It's like,
it's a mistake. It happens.
Yeah. It's like,
you know, and it just, it's frustrating and it's hard and it's embarrassing. And last year I went and got my motorcycle license, and I was by far the absolute worst one in the class. Like, I didn't drop the bike, thankfully, but that's about that was the level that I was at. I stalled my bike out more times than it probably was running. That's how many times
yeah.
I was so embarrassed by the whole thing. I was almost in tears. Mm-hmm. People weren't even looking in my direction because I was so bad.
Right.
They felt so bad. They're like, I'll just avert my eyes because this is really embarrassing. That's how bad I was. And I got so frustrated, and the more frustrated I got, the worse I got. Because I was getting frustrated and I wasn't concentrating and I wasn't focusing because I was worrying way too much about other people.
Yep.
And I wouldn't let myself off the hook. And
I bet most of them were not worried about you at all. They were probably more focused on what they were trying to do.
Oh my gosh.
You know?
And soon as I relaxed and let myself go and let myself off that hook, I started getting it. And all of a sudden, I start hearing the voices, hey, good job. You got that going, you know. Yeah, that's the figure 8. You got it. a little bit faster. You can do this, and pretty soon my team, my whole class is starting, all the people that I thought were laughing at me were actually cheering me on.
Yeah.
They just were embarrassed for me, and they didn't want to say anything to make things worse for me.
Right.
So as soon as I got let go and I got myself under control and relaxed into the moment, pretty soon I found I had a whole big support system that I didn't even know was there. In fact, I thought they were enemies. I thought they were making fun of me and laughing at me, but they were actually supporting.
Well, and a lot of that's because we tend to walk into those scenarios with that thought process.
Yeah.
We're walking in thinking everyone is like, it's almost like you're walking in like all eyes on me. And the truth is, as we've talked before, it's rarely ever that way unless you do something colossal as your entrance or something. But, when you walk into a class and sit down, everyone else is just like, whatever, because they're there for the same reason. You're all on the same footing to start with, essentially, because you're all there for that reason, And,
right.
And that's the thing is most people tend to be supportive and they do feel bad when someone else fails. Most people aren't the Nelson, from The Simpsons going to point and ha-ha at them because they fail, Most people are going to be like, try to give you a tip or something like that. Like, hey, I noticed you're doing this. Maybe just ease up a little bit, and then whatever. That tends to be the result. But we just can't let that go.
Right? There's a lot of failure quotes attributed to Lincoln, but there's one that I always liked. It's my great concern is not whether you have failed, but whether you are content with your failure. And I like that one. And then which reminded me of another one that Einstein supposedly said, a person who never made a mistake never tried anything new.
Yep.
And then my last one, I'm just going to paraphrase this one because I actually remember this one is the Edison one where he talks about how many times it took him to finally make the light bulb, and they said, they made the idea that he failed. He said, no, I actually learned 50 ways how not to make a light bulb.
Right.
No?
I just listened to, I think it was a replay one, but it's one of the TED Radio Hour episodes, and they were talking with the guy who is part of the X program that Google runs. And the X program is basically a program where they just take moonshots. Like everything they do when they walk in, like their whiteboard is like, let's do the craziest things we can possibly come up with, and then let's see if we can do them. But he said that the way that they've actually been more successful is the minute that they think they can break something, they go after breaking it 100% basically. Like they go whole hog at breaking it because they want to find out, hey, can it be broken? We want to know now rather than later. Because if we break it now, we might be able to take that and then start another project to where we fix the problem, and then now we're going to try to break it again. And that's their whole process. He's like, we give bonuses for teams that have broken their own projects. And I was like, that's crazy because, most of the time in business, if you're in the middle of a project and it fails, air quote, you're not going to get a bonus or a pat on the back. You're going to get in trouble, demoted, fired, blamed for it. And this is such a different way of thinking, but it's using, like you were saying, the quote that's attributed to Edison. It's that concept. It isn't about, they don't see it as failure. They go, well, we learned all this stuff in the process.
Yep.
And now we're going to take that and we're going to move on to the next thing. And that makes so much sense. It's tougher to do that in real life because, you can't just, it's tough to fail up, unless.
That's a great quote.
unless that's the job, and with the X program, that is the job. They're trying to succeed at things, like Google Glass came out of there. The Google smart or self-driving cars have come from there. I can't remember on the podcast, but he talks about other things that didn't, Google Glass has not been a great success for him, But he talks about other things that like they've tried and what they've learned in the process. And, it's such a cool, it's got to be a much different place to work for engineers and stuff like that because they're used to, you have to succeed, cause people's lives are in danger or this or that or whatever,
What interesting if you think about it, where you have actual scientists and part of scientific method is to figure out why something, tell me why this won't work.
Yeah.
Rather than just going, hey, I think we got it, let's go for it. It's like, okay, no, I think we got it. All right, now let's find out what we didn't find. What did we miss? And it's really remarkable how we don't do that with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We don't look at it. We want to talk ourselves into why something is such a good idea that we're unwilling to look at why it's not a good idea. I think that's that. And it comes down to that fear of failing. Like you're saying, become good at failing.
Yeah.
Because that helps you. When you become good at failing, you learn the things that don't work. And I think that's more important. It's less of an illusion.
Yeah, but definitely, as you mentioned, the Lincoln thing, it's like, don't be content with the failure. Learn from the failure. We've talked before. Yeah. Every time something doesn't go your way or life it throws an adversity at you, it's an opportunity to shift your gears. Like, maybe I'm not on the right path here. Maybe I need to alter this or this. And it's an opportunity to grow. And and along, if you stay on that path, I think it would really help. And again, it's a lot of talk, and I know it's tough to do because, like I said, I've been trying to reframe for a while now here, or a while myself, and it's difficult, but these are the things I'm trying to do as, we go. Real quick, I'll have a link for that TED Talk if people want. It's really cool. Like the website, the link I'll have in there, you can actually just go listen to that guy's part of the talk, which is like 12 and a half minutes. His name's Astro Teller. Which is
cool.
Like the guy mentions on there. It's an amazing name for a guy who's doing that kind of work.
Exactly. That's a great name.
Yeah. So let's see what we got here. Number 3 is be wrong in front of others. Which, boy, I'll tell you what, if anyone could tell you about the successfulness of that, it would be stand-up comics.
Yes.
Because they go up and they eat their lunch so many times before they get a joke right, or it's just a bad crowd. Musicians probably, I would assume as well, because there's just bad crowds sometimes. But, or, a guy will break a string or get a lyric wrong, or, and it's accidents and things happen all the time.
At night, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I said, but comedians will get up there and sometimes they'll just tell the joke and it's just crickets, and you're like, ooh, but they have to get over it. Yeah,
Exactly.
She writes, this is an interesting exercise I learned from Penelope Trunk's blog post, Perfectionism is a Disease. Here's how to beat it. This excerpt is, try having an opinion that is wrong. Tell a story that is stupid. Wear clothes that don't match. Turn in a project you can't fully explain. I did that a lot in art school. People will not think you're stupid. People will think you've spent your time and energy doing something else, something that meant more to you. I can attest from my art school days that is true, because there were times I turned in a project and I didn't have the full artist statement behind it. And people are like, wow, I really like how that's, and I'm turning it in going, this is garbage. Like, I'm going to be lucky if I pass. And you put it up in front of everyone and people are like, oh, I really like this and this about it. And the teacher, yeah, that's great. And you're like, yeah, that's totally what I meant to do, again, that's kind of fail up that way, like, all right, so. But she also writes, being wrong in front of others comes somewhat naturally for me. I'm often sporting a green smoothie mustache, spinach in my teeth, that I discover once I'm home after being out all day. I often say inappropriate things that make me cringe as soon as they're out of my mouth. What I've learned is that people don't care as much about us as we think they do. They are too busy caring about themselves.
Exactly.
Even when we make a massive mistake, they'll get over it far easily than we do. Because they're obsessing about their own mistakes. So if you don't tend to embarrass yourself regularly without effort like I do, I think Trunk's exercise is a good one for resolving your fear of appearing stupid or making blunders. It's really funny because I am on both sides of that fence, in that I will go on salty language and just make a complete fool of myself. When we're out, like I talked about us out in public having a good time last week, I don't care. I'm talking with, just being a goofy person. And I don't mind making those kind of mistakes or appearing dumb. I'll go for a joke. It can be the worst joke and I'll go for it and I don't care. Like I make a salty language. We call them bottom shelf puns because they are the worst puns possible. It's the lowest hanging fruit. And we're like, yep, we're going after it, even though we know that people should smack us across the face for doing it. But it's, on that hand, I'll do it. But on the other hand, I am very paralyzed about, I don't like to appear stupid. I don't mind appearing foolish or goofy, but I don't like looking stupid, you know? And if I think something puts me in a place to where I'm going to look less intelligent or I'm going to feel dumb, I don't want any part of it. You know, it's so odd how, like I said, I kind of sit on both sides of that fence.
Yeah. And I can see that. And audience also helps. I mean, the audience that you are around, if you have a good support system going, it's much easier to be more forgiving of yourself and just kind of relax into it and just go with it. Versus in circumstances like maybe at work or other places, it might be harder because you feel more judged than you do other places.
Yeah.
I'm very quirky, as I'm sure everybody has already picked up on by now by listening to the podcast. And at work, I'm still very quirky, and that's what I do. You know, I make odd 80s references. I pull crazy stuff out of the hat. You know, someone will make a comment and I'll sing a little tune or something, and people just laugh at me and they just go with it. And I try not to, it just stuff comes out of my mouth, and I try not to think too hard on it. Sometimes I get over critical and over obsessive about moments that I need to let go. But I've also really been trying hard to just let things go and just be who I'm going to be. Well, and that's okay.
You know, you mentioned about how the audience can help, and I can give a great example of that. Tony and I were at a bar one night, and they had, the concept was, it was basically like an open mic, but it was anyone who wanted to go up in front of the crowd could. You just had to throw your name in like a jar or whatever, and then they just draw someone's name and say, hey, it's your turn. And you could play music, tell a story, poetry, jokes, whatever you want to do. It's just a total open mic night, right? Mm-hmm. And Tony and I were talking about it, and he goes, would you rather get up there? And I've talked on this podcast about, there's another podcast called Risk, where people tell very intimate stories on there in front of audiences generally. And he said, would you rather do that, or would you rather go up there and do stand-up comedy? And I was like, 100%. I'd rather go up there and tell like the deepest, darkest secrets from my life.
Yes.
Because when the audience knows you're telling stories, they're there for the ride. Like, they're there with you. You know, for stand-up comedy, they're either going to laugh at you, or they're going to, you know, you can get heckled. You're going to, you know, have just the crickets. At least with the other, most of the time, the people that go see these storytelling things are there in a supportive manner. Like, they want you to, you know, they want to hear these stories and kind of move with you through the journey. People aren't always that way at stand-up comedy. A lot of times there's people that kind of go into business for themselves, you know?
Yeah.
Or just jerks. So I was like, oh yeah, in a heartbeat. So what about you guys? Which of the two would you rather do?
I would...
And real quick, before anything else, I've never been a performing stage artist of any kind. So, whereas both of you have.
I would tell stories because I wouldn't feel as pressured. Because it's like you said, very similar reasoning. As people will view it more of coming along with the journey versus comedy is so subjective and so individual. If you're performing to an audience, if only one person gets it, you know, it's really tough.
Yeah, it's a rough 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Yeah. If I tell a story, people might be quiet, but that's because the story dictates that it's time for them to be quiet, kind of a thing. Or they're just so like mouth agape, you know, because there's been some of the episodes of Risk where I've been sitting there with my mouth wide open, like, what? You know? So, yeah. What about you, Henno?
Yeah, I definitely story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because at least there's one thing I've learned is you can't fail when you're telling people the truth.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and your honest experience. Somebody can judge me.
Yeah.
But they can't say, but their judgment has no effect on me because it's my experience and it's the truth.
Right.
Like, I can't go wrong there.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm making stuff up and it doesn't go over well, in a lot of ways, I think that's the difference between when you know you're being authentic in an art form
Mm-hmm.
or in your day-to-day life is it's just so much easier when you just try to be you.
Yeah. And I think that's my thing with stand-up is I honestly think that stand-up is harder than the storytelling because I actually think stand-up is almost more intimate because you're giving a piece of you to the audience as far as like you created this. This is something you've cultivated versus the other. You're just telling the truth. Now it involves you, but you're a passenger just the same as the audience is in the kind of thing.
Like third person versus first person.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas comedy, it's like I created this for you, and you're not enjoying it. Versus the other, which is I'm just telling a story, and everyone's going to react. I don't know how they'll react, but they're going to react. And
absolutely,
it's such a weird thing, though. I was thinking Tony and I should do this for like our Q of the W or whatever, but because I think most people will pick storytelling. But I don't know if most people understand how terrifying getting up and telling a story could be to a group of people, as much as, because, giving a presentation, you're confident in what you're doing or whatever. It's a little different than that when you're getting up there, like that episode I talked about where, a woman talks about hitting what she thought were garbage bags, but they turned out to be people, it's, that's so.
Oh, horrible.
Anyway, all right. So the next one is celebrate your mistakes. The best way to become an expert in your field is by making mistakes, and lots of them, and to cooperate with the brain on learning from them. In her book, Better by Mistake, The Unexpected Benefits of Being Wrong, author Alina Tungend, I don't know how to say her name, explains the science of making mistakes and why learning from them is vital in a culture of perfectionism. In an interview, she highlighted the value of leaving your comfort zone and messing up. She said, we really do need to keep telling ourselves and others that perfection is a myth. It's not easy in a culture that prizes the concept of effortlessness, success, and results over the process. But we need to constantly remind ourselves that every time we take a risk, move out of our comfort zone and try something new, we're opening ourselves up to potentially making more mistakes. The greater the risks and challenges we take, the greater the likelihood that we'll mess up along the way. But also the greater the likelihood that we'll discover something new and get deep satisfaction from the accomplishment.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And we kind of just went over, making mistakes and such, so yeah.
Lots and lots and lots of comedy can come from it, too.
So true.
If it's,
yep.
Sometimes the moment sucks, but man, the story's amazing.
Again, like I mentioned last week, on the mental illness happy hour,
Yep.
Paul Gilmartin calls those awfulsome moments that in the moment you feel terrible, but again, I split my pants at a funeral, and I will tell anyone who wants to hear the story, because at the time it was like, oh geez, I was so embarrassed because of the moment, but now it's like, oh no, that's, it was really funny. And I love telling that story to people because it captures how on one hand, I'm terrified to be, look dumb or foolish, in front of people. But on the other hand, I'm like, I just went with it. I totally rolled with the punches that day for, the rest of that service. So, it's,
exactly.
Yep. Let's see. The next one is make some rules. When I first started dancing with a competitive dance studio in elementary school, the owner of the ballet company told my mom to keep me out of advanced classes for a year or two until I caught up to everyone, because she didn't want me to get discouraged. She could tell I was the perfectionistic type kid who would drop out if I wasn't doing a dozen some sort of turns in a row on point like the other girls. I have to go back to that rule whenever I start comparing myself to other writers or to mothers. I simply remove myself from the competition. Lately, that means staying off Facebook, which for me can easily generate feelings of inadequacy, which we talked about 2 weeks ago. When I first started blogging, I stayed off the homepage of the website I wrote for, where they listed the most popular blogs and most emailed posts. That's a really good top tip there, because that really is where I think a lot of the perfectionism comes from, is we're trying to hold ourselves to other standards, Like, you can be a great basketball player and not be Michael Jordan or LeBron or whatever. You can still be or you could be a Hall of Fame basketball player and still not be on the same level, anywhere near the level those guys are. you know? So there's no reason to not go be the best you that you can be, you know? I saw there was a comic book artist, I can't remember which one of them it was now, that made that comment that, you know, basically the same thing. He was like, every day I can look and go, wow, these guys are blowing me away. But all I can do is put in my work and just be the best I can be. And there's always going to be better than me. There's always going to, you know, you're always going to find people who are way better than you at whatever it is you think you're great at, you know?
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that it's, you know, going back to a little bit about the failure, it's like, there's not a real failure until you quit.
That's true.
I mean, realistically, because all of those, you know, coming to accept that you're not going to be the best at what you maybe dreamt how it would work out, doesn't mean that it's not going to work out in another way. It doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities there. And that's one thing that, you know, if you remember Linda Perry from Four Non-Blondes, while all these other programs on TV right now are trying to find the best and the most amazing. We're going to create a star. Mm-hmm. You know, we're going to find the next greatest hit out there. She was starting her own program that said, hey, you can be the greatest background singer and make a living at this.
Yeah.
You can do radio jingles and make a living at this. And, you know, trying to get people to look at that there's so much more to entertainment, music industry, whatever it is, than the stars.
Yes.
And that the only failure occurs is when you quit because, oh, well, I'm not going to be the best, so I'm not going to do this at all. And you may have squandered something that might have had you happy for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why, like, you know, coming back to that, you know, happy-ish and all that kind of stuff, it's like, I found my sense of self and happiness in my life, and it's not it's not being on that stage that everyone's seeing. You know, it's like satisfaction can come in so many different ways once we're willing to open ourselves up to that, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny you mentioned that. Like, I remember in high school, you know, like when I was in art classes in high school, if you said, what do you want to be? What profession do you want to go into? And at the time I was like, comic book art. That's what I really wanted to do. And I hit a point where I realized that even if I put the work in, that this was not going to be a likely scenario, you know? And it isn't that I wanted to give up on it. I was just looking at what it takes. And I'm just like, this is not my strength as an artist. I'm not great at these things, and I can work on them, but there's still a level where you're only going to get, you know, whatever. So what I did instead was I started looking at, well, what other ways can I get into the industry? And this is what a lot of comic book artists do. They used to start out as inkers. You used to see that a lot. They would start as inkers because they're pencilers, but there just wasn't enough jobs. So they would take inking jobs, you know, and then eventually hope to get backup stories and work your way in, you know. And now there's less of that because computers have, you know, there's not always inkers on projects anymore. But what I looked at was, you know what? I'm in graphic design classes, and I can do this. I can lay out pages, and I can do the page work and the title heads and logo designs and stuff for these books. So I could still go, hey, I'm in the comics industry, even though I'm not actually doing comic art. I could still show somebody an issue of a comic and go, I did this, this, and this in this issue. And they may not appreciate it. I may not get the accolades that, you know, you get from, you know, like at the time there was a magazine called Wizard that, you know, always had the hot artist and hot writer list. There was never a hot, you know, graphic designer list on it, but it was still, the idea is you could still get into that. And, you know, it was interesting because I had a kind of this talk with a guy that works for SourcePoint named Rich Bloom. And he does a lot of the graphic design work and logo designs and stuff for a lot of the SourcePoint books. And he's done them for other comics and stuff too. And it was kind of a thing with him. Like, he was good at art, but he was like, well, he kind of got in the door as a graphic designer, but he's also a really good artist, you know? So sometimes you can look at that and go, well, graphic design can get you in, and then maybe you get a penciling job off of it because now you're in the field. Someone might go, hey, you know, they see you doodling or whatever, we're working on some sketches and go, hey, we're, you know, let's see more of this. You don't know what opportunity could lead you to another one,
Absolutely.
That's it.
And it's so tough when you put yourself out there in whatever way it is, whether it's, art or comedy or giving a presentation or answering a question in a meeting. Anytime you put yourself out there, it is scary and it is tough. But keep in mind that you are probably your toughest critic.
Oh, probably. You are your toughest critic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are your worst critic.
Yeah.
So you may perceive the situation like, oh, it was mediocre or whatever. Other people may think it's revolutionary.
Yes. And I've seen that countless times.
Yeah,
I look at my art level and I know what my talent level is in the hierarchy of artists. I can in my head go, this is where I am. I'm maybe not as good as others, but I'm a lot better than a lot of people, kind of a thing. And yet at the same time, I can be like, oh, this isn't that good. And you hand something to somebody else and they're just like, it's the greatest thing you've ever handed them, and you're like, all right, that's awesome,
But it's so hard because the first thing we want to do is discredit them.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, or you can't see this, or, that's the first thing we want to do is just, instead of saying, thank
do you know the thing
like,
is, though?
Oh, no, you must be wrong if you're praising me.
I don't think that it's so much that you're trying to discredit them as you're trying to discredit yourself. Like, you're really, at that point, you're really taking shots at yourself with that, because again, with like art, if I hand somebody something I drew and I'm like, whatever. And they're like, wow, this is great. And I'm like, yeah, but this is off and this is off and this is off. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not attacking what they like. I'm just going in my head. It's why a lot of artists can't keep their own artwork. Like comic book artists and stuff, they sell all of it.
Their opinion.
No, I know.
Without meaning to.
Yeah, I know. But this goes back to, it's just you being the worst critic you can be, and it bleeds into these other people. Yeah. It goes back to when we talked about, someone just paying you a compliment and just saying thank you.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. See, the last one on here is actually what we were just talking about. It's be yourself. And I'm going to skip the first part of it because it's just whatever. But it says, ultimately, the best antidote for perfectionism is tapping into the courage to be yourself. Anna Quinlan is right when she writes, perfection is static, even boring. Imitations are redundant. Your true unvarnished self is what is wanted. By exercising a little tolerance towards our quirks and foibles, we grow in courage and resilience. By accepting ourselves as we are and learning how to respond to failures and self-compassion, we free ourselves to do our best and to succeed. And it's so true. Again, I keep using art references, but it's a great one. I've seen, there's a comic artist named Adam Hughes, and I was part of a group of just fans. And people are always, oh, what tools do you use? What pencils, what markers, whatever. And he goes, look, I could tell you I use, crayons and whatever, but don't go try to be me, and just buying these things don't make you me. You have to go find your own voice. And that's where the artists that stand out are the ones that have a style that you don't look at their stuff necessarily and go, oh, that's just a ripoff of this guy. It doesn't seem derivative as much, although there is some success in that level, where someone's been taught by someone else. So there's kind of a style that carries through their learning tree essentially, but it's a great point. You can buy exactly, you can have you can wear the Michael Jordan shoes. You can wear everything that he wore and you still can't hit a basket. It doesn't make you Michael Jordan,
Right. And it's such a unique and heavy concept, but we're taught it from a little kids all the way up is you are enough.
Yeah.
Just you are enough. People want you.
Yeah.
They like you, and that's great. And it's so tough of a concept for us to wrap our heads around. It's like, no. You can't just want me. You gotta want me plus.
Yeah.
And it's like, we can't seem to grasp it and get it through our minds. But yeah, people just like you and like me, individuals, each one of us. And it's awesome.
Yeah. And it is though, because it's very difficult with, for people to grasp that because you're constantly, it really is a comparison thing. And like we talked a few weeks ago, you know, like with the social media stuff, and it mentioned in this too, you know, about how easy it is. And we warned about that because, you know, a lot of times people are they're only sharing what they want to share. You know, and again, that's why, you know, we beat ourselves up more than other people because they only see what we've given them. You know, we can see head to toe what we feel are flaws, but how many of those things that you see as a personal flaw do other people just not even notice until you point it out? You know,
or think of it as a character enhancement.
Yeah, or they might. Yeah, exactly.
You know, you feel it's a flaw, and people may think it gives you unique character, and it like that part about you.
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
yeah.
It's just it's surrounding yourself with the right people, and I really think that's a lot of it comes down to it.
Absolutely, it does not hurt. That's for sure.
Yeah, finding your niche, finding the place you fit.
But that first step of that is accepting yourself so that, you know, then you can get a really good grasp of what you want and need around you. You know, it's like you see people come out of relationships sometimes and they're the never alone people. You know, like the minute they're out of one, they got to be in, or they don't get out of one until they have another one lined up. And it's like, maybe you should take some time and kind of, you know, search that out, like figure out why you've had 5 failed relationships in a row or whatever. You know, maybe you need to work on something. Maybe you're not going after what you really need or want in life. You're just repeating a process, you know. Maybe
you're a circle and you're pretending you're a square.
Yeah, exactly. So
sometimes you just need to own up to the fact, like, you know what, I'm a circle. And I'm cool being a circle.
And then you can find other circles or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
You fit with the circles. It's like, wait a minute. Yeah. This is my world. Yeah. This is where I should have been all along. You know, it's like for whatever reason, I felt I was a square, silly me. You know?
Or you've tried your whole life, like, I'm going to be a square. And it's like, no,
exactly.
you're not.
I am a square. I will always be a square. I'm going to be a square. And you fight up against the grain and you just fight because you're positive you're a square. And no, just a circle.
Yep.
But circles are amazing.
Yeah, everyone else sees you as a circle. You look in the mirror and see square and can't figure out why. You know, you don't fit. Yep, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, it's
wild how so many of those things end up, you know, leading to all the things we talk about, you know, depression and substance abuse and whatever it is.
Sure.
Yeah. It really, you know, it all comes back down to self-esteem, you know, ego. It really does, this perfectionism and who we have around us, who raised us, you know, who were our mentors, you know, that kind of a thing. Yeah. One of the ones that I'm amazed at is, and it's a real subtle one, is when you hold other people up to your standard rather than their standard.
Yeah.
You know, and that's its own form of perfectionism. Mm-hmm. You know, when you're looking at other people saying, why don't they do it like I would do it?
Exactly.
And it's like, well, because they're not you.
Right.
They get to do it how they want to do it. Mm-hmm. And if it's not perfect, then that's their right to not be perfect.
And those things you just mentioned are both on the distorted thinking worksheets.
Yeah, exactly. And that idea of, you know, just being you, I think that we find ourselves. I don't think we find ourselves through successes. I think we find ourselves through failures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you're willing to see who's going to stick around. You know, who's willing to help. You know, like they showed a thing on the Olympics about, you know, in one of the races where a woman fell at the beginning of it, and 2 women fell actually. And the one, instead of just getting up and just immediately running, she made sure the other woman was all right and helped her up. And, you know, and it's like that kind of a thing. There's a failure there. She's on the biggest stage in the world for her sport. It doesn't get bigger than that. And she got tripped up and fell. There's no chance she's medaling. You know, like you've trained 4 years to just fall at the Olympics. That's what, you know, you can look at it that way. Or she could look at it as though, you know what, when faced with that, I saw this other woman needed me and I helped her. You know, and that's, and there you go, that she found who she really is in that moment. And she was willing to give up her, again, she didn't have a chance at winning the race, but she still could have, hey, I'm going to go complete the run, you know, and I think she did later, but it wasn't until after, you know, the woman was like, I think they brought a wheelchair or whatever over to her to help her off because she had really hurt herself, you know, so it's that kind of a thing. I think that really, like with me, that's the way it's always been. is you see people fall in and out of your life, and a lot of times you don't think about it until you really start to look at what you need from people sometimes, and you realize that it's like, wow, they're only falling in and out of my life because they want something. Like, they're not really interested in being in my life. They're just using something from me, basically. And then you start weeding those people out. And then you realize, you know, I may have a smaller circle, but the ones I have are the ones who, on my worst days, still want me to be part of things.
Yep.
You know, and they know I'm struggling. They know I'm going through a really hard time, but they still want me to come hang out with them, or they want to hang out with me, or, you know. And like you said, this all is such a grip on that control, you know, just trying to make everything perfect in life. And it reminds me so much of the paralysis by analysis, because when you're trying to control everything or get everything, all your ducks lined up every time, you end up not making a move. And then in the end, you can go, well, maybe you're not happy because you're not making any moves. I'm using myself as an example for this, by the way. You know, when you don't, you know, like I've said before, you know, if you're not, you know, I'm just standing still. You can't stand still and expect everything to come to you, you know. So,
well, and it's making it, everything's a decision. Opting out of a decision is still making a decision.
Yeah.
You're deciding to opt out. So, you know, if you're not, so you still are deciding what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know?
It's weird though, because like I agree with you, but it's almost odd because there's elements of the whole just ignoring things that kind of it's still a decision, but at the same time you're opting to not make an A or B decision. I'm just going to ignore it and hope things get better. And that's why I said it's just, you end up just staying in place and expecting the world to come to you. And you're like, why isn't this, at least if you make any other decision, things happen. Catalyst, you know, something is the catalyst to something else and whatever. But by just standing there, it's like generally
things happen.
Yeah,
you're
but
just not involved in
that's
them.
what I mean. Is nothing happens to you, and you're just like, why isn't this? You know. So yeah.
But things do. I mean, opting out, you do have a lot to have. Like with you, you've opted out of making your phone calls.
Yeah.
So that what's happened to you now is you're out of medicine, and you know.
Yeah.
So you have negatively affected yourself by not making any moves.
There's a difference in that, though. We're arguing the same point, but it's
yeah.
My part of it is like the tiniest minutia of it is that.
Yeah.
On that, you're right. I made a decision to not make those calls, but there are some times where it isn't that I don't make a conscious decision. I just go, you know what I mean? It's more like you just drift. Yeah. And that's where I was kind of getting at, but you're right. So, do either of you guys have more on this? I don't know.
I was just also wanted to add about my own experience was I used to put accomplishments and successes and those kind of things as like, that's who I am.
Oh yeah.
You know, my accomplishments in life, my successes in life, that those define me. Mm-hmm. And that made me into a person that it had more had to do with how things look rather than how things are. And that's also goes back to that reality versus, you know, yeah, sure, this is how we'd like it to be, but hey, this is how it's going to be. You know, let's be, you know, be realistic. And that's kind of in that same way. It's like, this is how I want the world to see me. And if I do these things, then that means I'm worth something.
Yeah.
And it's so external, it had nothing to do with finding anything about who I really am, and to be okay with my faults. You know, because if you're trying to put on the best image you can, you know, there's so much wrapped up in that, in perfectionism. Yeah. That's why I think if it was kind of it's funny how this happened today. The developer of the property I work at was at the site, and he flew in. You know, he's got a private jet, the whole deal, tons of money, and he sent the jet back to fly other people that were going to come for this weekend. And he was supposed to do this like a month ago, but there's a lot of construction going on, so he postponed it. Well, now we got the smoke in the air. And he was like almost in tears. Like this was killing him because that's how much he wanted to do something for, you know, the people he was bringing out to the property.
Right.
And yet they were totally okay with it.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, who cares? Let's go get some tequila and drink in the room and blah, blah,
Sure.
blah. And,
Yeah.
you know, but for him, there was a struggle. And it makes sense because that's how he is where he is.
Yeah.
You know, all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and he makes things happen.
Yeah.
He makes things happen. Yet there he is sitting and going, I know I can't control what's going on here.
Yeah.
I know I can't control the weather. I can't control that there's a fire.
Yeah.
But
Right.
it's still in his core. That's who he is. I make things happen.
Yep.
Until he hits that thing. And that was for me a major turning point when someone explained to me, it's like, and I've been working on a song about this where it's like, I don't sweat the fact that the leaves start to fall.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother me. The seasons changing, they don't throw me into a tizzy.
Yeah.
I accept it. I accept it and just prepare myself for the next, phase.
Yep.
But when those things happen in my life in situations that I feel like I can control, all of a sudden the world is over.
Yeah.
The reality is there's no difference in it.
It's not. You're absolutely right.
None.
But we catastrophize those things at times. And it could be no bigger even, or not even, that big, but you're totally right. It's
the world is ending. I'm losing my job. Everything's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you turn up the next day and it's like, oh, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I'm happy I've been given the opportunity to become okay with my failures and to become okay with that, hey, only human here, and that everything that I can look back and say, yeah, that did end up being a good thing or whatever, because it sets me up for the future. Because, if you're a perfectionist, how do you deal with aging? Oh, yeah, you just keep trying to make yourself look like you looked 20 years ago.
Right.
And I'm sorry, but there's just no grace in that for me.
Yeah, me either. Yep.
And you just you're not as pretty. I really think the prettier people is the ones that accept who they are and accentuate who they are, Like those wrinkles, you earn them. There's a reason you have wrinkles. Mm-hmm. Enjoy them, express them. I don't know.
Yeah, that's where that part where you if I see that in other people and I admire that, the people that are content with themselves and happy with who they are. And I admire that so much. So if I admire that, then I should make every effort to be that as well.
Yeah.
I think that it's funny because I'm the same way. Like the people that I envy the most would be the people who are just okay being who they are and just go through the world. It's why I've said before, I have been at places to where I will see like the ugliest people hit on someone else. I've seen people who are huge compared to me, and I'm a big dude, but huge, and they walk around like they're like a fashion model. Like life does not bother them in the way and I'm just like, geez, I don't even want I don't even want to put myself out there for anybody, kind of a thing. It's like, how do you it's so amazing. So I'm envious of the people that do that. It's like, and I asked a friend of mine the one time, because he hit on women all the time, and this is years and years ago, and I was like, how do you just do this? Like, I'm terrified. And he's like, you just do it. And I was like, no, but how do you, and I'm wanting like the inner workings of his head. I want to know the thought process.
Exactly.
Because I want to control it. I want to be able to take that, plug that into me, and then go, okay, and plug every little, and he's like, I just do it. And I'm like, well, what if you, fail or whatever? And he's like, oh, well, it's just,
oh yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And I'm just like, how can you be that way? Because I can't let go of that. I can't just go, I'm going to walk up to someone and they're going to look at you. There's going to be a chance they're going to look at you and go, nope, or they're going to be horrible to you. But if they're horrible to you, then really the only way you should look at that walking away is, I'm better off without that person.
Yeah.
But that isn't how it works.
I found that out now.
But that is not how it works. You see it as a rejection instead of going, I dodged a bullet. And that's the reframing. If you could look at every time, if I could switch that to I dodged a bullet or something else, their loss, those kind of mentalities, that's that switch that a lot of people, need that they don't have, So it's just crazy to me how when I've asked people different stuff and for years and years, they were just like, I just do it. And my head would just explode, you know?
Well, you know what, Brian, you and I both love what we talk about all the time. We love process.
Mm-hmm.
We love learning about process.
Yep.
I love to find out how the album was made, or how where the painter, where they were in their mindset, or whatever it is. How did they create this? How did you get to this point?
Yeah.
And it's all part of everything. That's why I do building maintenance. I love to troubleshoot. I love to figure out what's wrong, fix it, and get it working right.
Yeah.
All those things. It doesn't work when it comes to fixing me.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
It just doesn't.
No.
And that's why I used to overthink things as well. Like, okay, because I want to know before I even get into it,
Yep.
how the whole thing works from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And when someone says, well, you know what? Why don't you just work on what you can today and we'll worry about tomorrow? That would literally make my head just go,
yeah.
You know,
does not compute. Does not compute.
Does not compute.
Picture.
Yep.
Come on.
No. I need to have the next 6 months spelled
Yep.
out for me.
Yep.
No, let's just start with today. Let's work with what you need to today, and we'll worry about tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's like,
That's why when I asked my friend, and he was just like, I just do it. And I was like, yeah, but what do you think of before you walk up there? He's like,
yeah,
I don't. And I'm like, no. I'm like, you have to think of, because in my head, I have to plan all the steps. I have to prepare for what's going to be said so that I can kind of not have a response, but that way I can kind of bob and weave, if you will, through the process. And then I can, as I'm going, I can keep working forward, And he's like, yeah, I don't know how you live with yourself. And I'm like, yeah, I don't either.
That's so, and you know what's funny? As I see that, I see it in recovery all the time now, where it's like, I mean, I was this is actually really great that we hit this part of it, because it makes me realize when I think to myself, I'm not a perfectionist. Oh yeah, I am a perfectionist in some ways.
Right.
And when I wanted to find out what it was going to get sober, I wanted somebody to literally lay it out like a freaking manual for me before I agreed to even try anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of it comes back to what I've said, is like, so many things in my life, I couldn't think my way into a new way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I had to believe that I could get a new way of thinking. And it comes back to faith again. It's courage isn't the opposite of fear. Faith is the opposite of fear to me. It's just having some trust, some belief, and those things that nobody can explain how they work.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to go for it.
Well, you're right. Like, I did the same thing when I was thinking about, going to the doctor for my depression, and, the thought of antidepressants. I looked up, I'm not going to lie. I looked up on Google, I typed in most popular antidepressants. Then I went through each one, looked at the side effects, and then I started looking at how people basically what worked for them, what didn't work. I'm doing this kind of level of stuff before I would even go to the doctor. There's a chance I could go to the doctor and she could go, let's start with some therapy and see where we go. Or maybe it's this, or, I didn't even allow for room for that. I'm just heaping on so that I am prepared. I'm ready, and it's like, why? That's what they're there for. You walk in and then they go, here's what I think you should do. If you then want to take it and maybe do a little research and be like, hey, I don't like the side effects of this drug, that's fine. You can do your due diligence then, but you don't need to do it up front. And yet, there I was, like I said, I'm looking at the top, antidepressants so that I could then go on Reddit and different sites and see how people are talking about the goods and the bads of them, rather than just talking to the doctor or a pharmacist or, looking it up after she's like, well, I think we should try Effexor, and then go, okay, well, I'm going to go look up Effexor, and then go, yeah, I don't, then have that opinion is one thing, but just, it's so bad. And I've gotten to where I'm not like that now. Like when they've mentioned the one that I'm on now, the Trintellix, I was like, and they told me this and this and this about it. I was like, okay. And they were like, she's like, what do you think? And I was like, or he was like, what do you think? And I'm like, all right, let's do it. Kind of a thing. It's my process is turned to where through therapy and stuff, I've gotten to where it's more like I'm in for the long haul. Like, bring it on. Let's try it, because the end goal is to just get better. It's, you know what I mean? So it's like, if I don't try what's available, I can't just go, well, you know?
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. No solution for me.
Yeah,
you gotta
like
try
I said,
all solutions.
Yeah, you can't say you're all in and then not be all in. That's kind of where I'm at with it. So, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
And that's right. I think we've very, very thoroughly covered all the topic here.
Yeah, this is a topic we could talk a lot about, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And we can continue for a long, long time.
I know for a fact I can, because this is definitely one of my this is on the Distorted Thinking worksheet. This one for me should have exclamation points. Yeah. And Jen's shaking her head. Yeah. Cause yeah.
Oh yeah.
She knows me well enough to know. And that's, you know, my biggest steps forward, I think, in therapy have been what I've been willing to let go of, and not try to, this has got to be perfect. Like, again, with sleep, I have to get 8 hours of sleep. I have to do this. Nope, I'm not doing that anymore, you know? So.
No, that's awesome that you're getting to that point.
Yeah.
Because it's very difficult to let these things go.
Still have a lot of work to do.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
Very true.
Real quick, before you get to the end stuff, there was something else I wanted to bring up real quick, which was I listened to Wrestling with Depression, episode 130, a couple days ago, and Marty DeRosa, the host of that podcast, is talking with a woman named Liz Ziner, and she talks about having ADD and her whole kind of journey with it, and they get really down into it, where she talks about like her symptoms, how it affected her, where she's at now. Like, it's a really good talk. And it really kind of, I got a much better understanding for ADD after listening to it, because most people, as she points out, most people think of ADD and they just think, oh, you can't concentrate. Give them some Ritalin or whatever, you know, or Adderall or whatever it is they give them. I'm sorry. And it's not that. It's just, there's a whole lot more to it. It's kind of like when people think like OCD, they just think counting or this or that. And there's so many different parts of it. And like I said, I thought this did a great job talking about ADD. And I actually think, I can't remember if it's this episode or another one, where they mentioned like a book for people that's a really well-received book on ADD. It's like a huge, I can't think. Actually, I think it might have been on a different episode the more I think about it. But anyway, I thought this was a really good listen. And anyone who's listening to this show, you know, Marty does a great job on his show. Like, it's really relaxed. He has a guest every time. They just talk about whatever it is they're going through mental illness wise. And it's, you know, like I said, it's super, super chill. And it's just, you know, it's a really good look at him talking with comedians and, you know, such. And sometimes there's wrestlers on there, but it's generally about mental health. It's not really about wrestling or comedy or whatever. Sometimes, you know, but they all share, you know, they all kind of share stories from it. So, but anyway, I'll have the link for that in the show notes also. Again, if you want to find it, it's Wrestling with Depression, number 130.
Cool. Now, before we do the end up stuff, I wanted to do a quick shout out. And the shout out I have is for Kevin Smith, who is a director and a writer and an actor. Most famous for, you know, Clerks and Mallrats, Chasing Amy and whatnot. The reason I want to do a shout out for him is he did something really cool that I actually think is very applicable to every bully, including the bully inside our own heads. So I'm going to read something and I want you to kind of flip it a little bit, because he's talking about like an internet troll or an internet bully. Mm-hmm. But try to flip it a little bit and think about it as if you're talking to that bully inside you. And I think it really adds a whole nother dimension to things. So what happened was an internet guy shot a message to Kevin Smith's daughter. And there's lots of cuss words and stuff, so I'm going to bleep there. But they wrote, "You're ugly as blank. And that steaming horse of blank of a movie, Yoga Hosers, should be banned. Blank your talentless blank of a father for trying to compare it with The Matrix. You're cancer, and I sincerely hope you end up like Lindsay Lohan and dead."
Wow.
So, Yes. That is what...
Lindsay Lohan's not dead, but I think he meant them as two separate things, potentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he, that was what the guy decided that he was going to put on her Twitter page or Instagram page.
Okay.
With no real prompting.
Right.
Kevin's response: what it's like to be my daughter, 17-year-old. Received this message simply for the heinous crime of posting a pic of herself. I have zero clue what the reference to The Matrix is about, but wow, way to unload on a teen girl because you have nothing to do in life. But even though I should be apoplectic.
Yeah.
Thank you
That's a
about
tough word. Yeah.
My kid thought it was funny. She said, bemused in the bitterness. But here's a nickel's worth of free advice for folks like this troll. So here's the part. Think about it talking to yourself. If you hate me this much, the better use of your time is to make your dreams come true instead of slamming others for doing the same. The best revenge is living insanely well. So if you want to get back at the 17-year-old girl for the grievous crime of enjoying her life, the best way to do it is to succeed in your own existence. Show the world why we should be paying attention to you instead of anyone else. Because randomly attacking others merely communicates how creatively and emotionally bankrupt you are. You think you have something to offer the world, but others are just getting all the attention? Don't blank or punish the world. Just create. Create something nobody's ever seen before, and there's a good chance the world will notice you. Attacking teen girls on the internet is the saddest form of blank that exists and requires no discernible skill or talent. You want attention? Don't make yourself mad. Make something original and fun. Because if you're not being useful in this world, you're being useless. Don't be useless. Go make stuff that makes people happy. You know? And if you stop me and put that in perspective, yeah, it's a little awkward and not perfectly fitting, and of course. But if you think about it, that bully inside you, the bullies out there in the world, the negatives, all that stuff that pulls in on us, instead of kowtowing to that and hiding from it, embrace it, use it, make something useful. Go out there in the world and say, you know what? I don't care about all this negativity. I'm going to make something great. I'm going to be great. I'm going to be the best me I can be. And work towards that, and you'll find you'll get the attention you deserve, because that's the attention you want, because that will get attracted to you. The positiveness, the happiness, all of that contentment that you would have from being good with who you are and getting rid of all that negativity will draw these people to you. And pretty soon you'll start finding yourself much more comfortable and much more happy in the world that you're living in. So I just thought that was an amazing way of handling a situation that's very common these days.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and that's the thing is it's so easy for people to just sit behind keyboards and just mouth off like this to people. And it's like, what if I just don't understand. Like, if you hate someone that much, if you hate something that much, just move on. Why are you following her on Instagram? I mean, why are you bothering to waste your time? How much time did that take for you to think of and write? Even if it was 10 minutes, that is 10 minutes of your life you have just thrown away. You have just completely dumped that into the ether. Because generally what happens when you post comments like that is you just get ignored or blocked. Most people don't engage people that act like that anymore. You know? And, like me, if I have somebody do that to me, I'm done with them. You know? I'll just block them. I don't even care. Because it's like, what, why? Unless you're in my actual life, I really don't care what you think. You know, like, when it comes down to it, like some random person, if I write a Twitter joke and they're like, that was stupid, it's like, okay, don't follow me. Here, I'll make it easier. Block. Like that kind of a thing. But I don't write to them anymore. I used to. I used to send a thing that was like, oh, you found a way to block Island or whatever. Me and Tony both used to do, and we would send like a picture of something that said block or we would use we'd show Mjolnir, Thor's hammer and be like, oh, you get the band hammer, that kind of thing. And I got to where I was just like, nope, it's just, I'm not even going to do it anymore. I'll just block him and move on. And that's it, Now, I'm not knocking Kevin Smith because, I know he took some heat over this because some people are, oh, daddy's got to stand up. And it's like, no, look, he's being a dad. He's being a good human is what he's being.
Absolutely.
I have posted comments like that to other people. Like, to where I'm like, why are you wasting your life hating on somebody? Just move it along,
Yeah.
It's, if I turn on a TV show and I hate the TV show, I don't sit there and watch it and then sit down and write I just stop watching the show. This is not difficult. And yet, and what's this person hoping? I mean, the worst part is this person's username has probably been shared on various websites and they've got 15 minutes out of it.
Yeah.
Because they've rode on Kevin Smith's tails, and that's,
absolutely. And that is the downside to it. But I really loved his thought process. And that's one of the reasons I am a big fan of Kevin Smith as a person. His work has got good points and bad points.
Yeah.
But him as a person, from what I have seen and heard him speak and all this other stuff. Obviously, I don't know him personally, but from what I've gathered, I'm a big fan of who he is, and this type of thing just underlines that again for me.
I agree.
Is that I really love how he looks at things and how he presents things.
Right. And I agree. It's tough because you really do want to lash out at people when they're being trolls on the internet. But it really, to frame it with what we talk about on the show, when you do that, you're expecting change from them. You're trying to change them, and that's not for you to do. They're going to be who they're going to be. And Kevin Smith lashing out at this guy, he's not going to take a step back and look at who he is. No. He's going to, of course, blah, 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 blah. That's just whatever.
But maybe somebody else will.
They won't.
Hey.
They might.
Positive.
They won't.
Positive thinking. No negatives.
I'm not being negative or positive there. I've seen enough of the internet. I've seen people try to be positive and only be met with negative. It's just how it is at the moment, But like I said, I don't
stop being positive.
No, I didn't say. That's why I said I don't fault Kevin Smith for posting that. It's just, it's going to get posted on a lot of things, but it's essentially going to fall on deaf ears, So, but yeah, whatever.
You just keep going anyways.
Yeah, no, he's going to. I bet that probably bugged him for the length of him writing that. And then after that, he was probably like, meh, and moved on,
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he's moved on.
It's not like it's the first time Kevin Smith has experienced a hater, Yeah.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I forgot where I was going with that.
I think you were going to wrap the show up. You were going to wrap the show up.
I know. And I completely blanked out there.
If you'd like to continue the conversation with us.
My catchphrase.
I know your line, yeah. Line.
Yes, line.
Don't worry, we'll edit that out.
If you would like to continue the conversation with us, everyone, you can reach me on Twitter at Jen's Crazy Life, Jen with a G. You can also shoot us an email at thecrazylifepodcast@outlook.com. You can also visit our website at thecrazylifepodcast.weebly.com. And you, Henno?
You can find me on Twitter at Ida Henno, or you can find me on Facebook, Henno Heiter.
And you can also check the show out on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/Crazy Life Podcast, where, like I said earlier, I posted a couple videos about driving anxiety if anyone's interested. Or if you don't understand how somebody like me can go without driving for a while, I think, these kind of talk about what people go through when they're driving. It's not a bad insight to have also. And then you can also follow the show on Twitter if you just want to see when the new episodes come out, basically at the Crazy Life Pod. You can follow me on Twitter at Stunami. And if you want to check out the other show that I'm on, which is Salty Language, it's at salty_language or at saltylanguage.com. Let's see. Oh, we're part of the Tangent Bound Network, which can be found at tangentboundnetwork.com, and the Wicked Radio Network, which can be found at wickedradionetwork.com. However it is that you find us, whether it's iTunes or Stitcher or whatever way you found us, please rate, review, and share if you could, please. That would really help us out because it helps us get move up in the rankings so we can be more visible to more people. And yeah, I think that's all of that. The next segment is that we're not trained therapists, doctors, or professionals. Please don't take this podcast as a substitute for therapy. And if you do find yourself needing help, please seek it out. Please don't self-diagnose. Just try to, like we said earlier, it's tough. We know it. There's a lot of work to be done probably, but that's what we're here for. We're telling you how we're going through it. And the last thing, of course, is if you're feeling suicidal or you're having ideations of suicide or planning anything, please alert someone in your support system. Talk to your doctor, friends, whatever. Or if you're thinking about suicide, please call 911. Tell them you're having a mental health emergency. Or there's a lot of links on the Facebook page for places you can get help as well. Or just contact one of us and we can put you in. I can send some information over, or call the suicide prevention hotline number, which I don't have handy, but you can find very easily on your phone or whatever. So, but please don't act on it. Just contact somebody in your support system. And, if you want help, it's out there for you.
Absolutely. And with that, I'm going to change it up a little bit for you guys tonight. Keep wiggling your toes and have a great week.